G'day, it's Simon and Kristal from Pumped On Property, and today we're bringing a bit of a new segment to the channel where we're talking about our thoughts, our lessons, the things that we value when it comes to property investing. Today we've got a little cup of coffee, which
Cheers.
I'm loving, by the way. It tastes amazing. We actually got a nice Breville coffee machine in the office a few weeks ago. And I'm loving it. I can do almost everything. I make good coffee. I just can't do the latte art yet. I think first things first, like myself and Kristal, we're brother and sister. We're a couple of years apart. We spent our whole entire lives together. We got similar lifestyles. We got similar values. We got similar ideas. Kristal's been working as a buyer's agent. We basically started the business with Banter, right?
Yeah.
Like 8 years ago now.
Yeah, so I've been up here for a little while now. Simon came up, about a year after I
I
did.
think so, yeah.
And like Simon said, we've just grown up together. We're only a year apart in school. We've sort of always done the same things, had similar groups of mates. And yeah, I thought it was a nice way to kind of touch on our experiences in the property world and our experiences in life, just to kind of bring this segment to you guys and share what we've learned.
Because it's funny, like I studied a Bachelor of Commerce at university, and I was like that Sydney guy. Like I wanted to work in corporate Sydney, wear my suit and tie on the train into the city every single day. Obviously you're a little bit different, but like I didn't necessarily have the experience in real estate when I started working as a buyer's agent. It was just something that we learned. And I've learned so much over the last 7 years. Like it's wild. I feel as though it's just been a perfect thing to be doing in sort of your late 20s, early 30s, like learning about investing, learning about psychology, learning about the Australian market, like talking to a bunch of different people from different walks of life. And it's just been like a really cool 7 years. And I'm like, hindsight 2020, you know, I just can't think of anything better to be doing with my time at this stage. But like you've been doing it for a little bit longer, you know, and you, similar to me, didn't have that much experience when coming in, but like what are some of the lessons that you've learned?
It's really, really funny. I think when you think about property, it's so easy to get bogged down in like what's right in front of you. I find that so many people we speak to, myself included, when it comes to like buying property, no one can see the forest through the trees. Like you get so caught up in the short term, and it's fully a psychological game. And like you said, like doing this, it's taught us so much about psychology, because it's really about how you're going to react when an opportunity is put in front of you to call to action. So if you've got to put forward an offer on a property, everyone gets really caged up and closed over, and those fears around, is this the right decision, tends to kind of blur your vision. And I just feel like so much of what we've learned in property comes down to like the psychology around decision making. And I think when it comes to like what I've learned, obviously the fundamentals are so important in terms of buying the property. So like we love detached housing, we love blocks of land. As bigger land, the better. We love low maintenance. We love nice areas where you've got a high percentage of owner occupiers. And no matter how much you can look into those fundamentals around making a decision, you're asked to put forward an offer on a property or you're signing that contract, fear always gets in the way, regardless of the logic behind the decision.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like all 4 properties that I've negotiated on, it's been such a whirlwind of emotions. And then even in those first like few weeks of buying a property, you know, you're working with a mortgage broker, sometimes an accountant, solicitors, building and pest inspectors, insurance brokers, real estate agents, buyer's agents. So there's just so much going on at the exact same time. So you really do need to have a clear mind. You need to have that confidence in you know, dealing with those things as they arise, because, you know, problems will come up. I think that's inevitable. Like that's one of the lessons that I've learned is like, you know, life isn't perfect, and intelligence is the ability to adapt to change.
Yeah.
Like, because change is going to come whether you like it or not. And it's like, if you get so stuck in a particular way of being, you're gonna miss out on opportunity, and it's gonna make it a lot harder to get to where you want to be in the longer term future. Like, to come back to the psychological point, like one of the lessons that I've learned is like, if you are freaking out, just take a bigger picture view.
Yeah.
You know, like, because when you are in it so much, you know, it gets very ones and zeros. But like, if you scale out and you take a bigger picture view, If you're thinking short term over 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, you're going to feel like you're getting taken advantage of, and you're going to feel like it's not happening for you, it's happening to you. But then if you were to extend that out to like a 10-year, 20-year, 50-year time horizon, everything's going to be washed out, and it will all end up being the best at the end of the day. And, an example of that is like looking at the suburbs in Brisbane that we've bought in. Like, we started off buying really close to the city and really close to the beaches because they were so affordable back in the day. And then every time you have to learn about a new location, because it's not as good as where we used to buy, it's kind of like, oh man, like I wish we could still buy there. I wish we could still get to those high quality locations. But it's like the lower quality locations over 20 years will generate roughly the same return on investment anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just like overcoming that short term thing. So it's like time horizons. Let's work on our time horizon and figure out, how long we actually intend to hold this property for, and then that will really dictate what you should really be doing short term. Sorry, I just went on a bit of a tangent.
No, I love it. It's very much the case though, and I find like another thing we get bogged down in the short term is like, how much is this property going to cost me? Is the property a renovator? What's the maintenance going to look like? And everyone gets so caught up on like the house that's sitting on the land and what that house is going to cost you. The reality is a house is a depreciating asset. The land is what appreciates. So over the long term, that house is going to cost you money. You're going to have to buy new air cons. You're going to have to chip in some renovation money. You're going to have to upgrade the curtains, polish the floors, whatever it might be. That house is going to require those things at any point during owning the property. And it doesn't freaking matter. Like at the end of the day, when you're buying a house and you see something on realestate.com, everyone gravitates towards the property that looks good online and literally bypasses the fact that it's on a main road, or that there's a train station across the road, or that the block of land is 200 square meters, because all they're looking at is like, wow, this house looks so nice. Erase that from your long-term vision around holding a property, because even the nice house today, 20 years from now, is going to need some work done to it.
Especially when you've rented out to tenants for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly right. So if you can get past what the house looks like and look at the things like what the house is on, where that land is located and everything like that, it's going to give you a much, I guess, a better well-rounded approach to investing, a better quality portfolio longer term, because you're not getting so bogged down in like the property itself and more around like the vision, the suburb you're in, the block of land you're on, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the fundamentals, like as you were saying earlier, like that's what matters, and creating a criteria of, what you do want to avoid, because at the end of the day, like you don't want to just buy anything. You still want to make sure, and it's like easy for us to say those types of things, but then it's like, well, what does matter? Well, ideally buying in capital cities if you can afford it.
Yeah.
Buying houses on big blocks of land, as you said. If you can't afford those, then look at major regional markets where there's good economic fundamentals like population growth, job growth, diverse economy, infrastructure growth, government spending, these types of things. And, avoiding all of those red flags that are going to hold you back, like buying a property with no building approval and that's going to screw your insurance, or buying in a flood zone or a fire risk zone. Or a land hazard like landslide overlay location, and all of those things are going to affect your insurance. And making sure that you're not buying on a street that's got 90% public housing and you're one of the only houses that's like privately owned. Like all of these things do matter, but like I do agree with you. It's like all of that is more about like the land itself and the location of that land. But then what's sitting on top of that land, like me personally, I don't really care about. But like obviously you and I are different as well, because we love value add.
Yeah.
So like for me, all 4 of the properties that I've bought have had some value add potential, whether that be through a renovation, a knockdown rebuild, adding a granny flat in the backyard, or subdividing the land. I'm somebody that doesn't just want to buy and wait for the next 20 years. I want to buy, add value, and then wait for the next 20 years. And like that's just my personal strategy, but that's because I developed a strategy and I stick to that strategy because I know what I value, I know what I believe in, and I know what I'm willing to do to get to where I want to be. And obviously you and Matt are pretty similar. There's obviously with your skill sets.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've spoken about it before, but my husband's a builder and I do this in property. So for us, it makes a lot of sense to buy properties that can have renovations done to them. We're not really in that realm of knocking down rebuild right now, just because we've got young kids and it's really expensive and the bank won't give us any money to do that.
Well,
But buying and renovating is a really big part of our strategy. Like we've bought 5 properties over the last sort of 7 years, renovated 3 or 4 of those and still hold a couple of them. And that's just what worked for us. Like we were in a position where, the house didn't matter so much. It was what we could do to the house, whether that was restructuring the floor plan, kitchens, bathrooms, the cosmetic stuff. And that value add made us probably an extra 80 to 150K in the market at the time, regardless of whether the market was increasing in value in that same period of time. So that made sense for us. It doesn't make sense for everyone because not everyone's got a builder as a husband or has boots on the ground in the state. So if you were an interstate investor looking to buy up here, like I said, you don't want to get emotionally attached to the condition of the home, but you still want to make sure the home fits your strategy and fits what you want to hold long term in your portfolio.
Yeah, which comes back to that psychology point as well. It's like, okay, well, you need to think about what you want. You need to think about the lifestyle that you want to lead in the future and the lifestyle that you want to lead right now. You need to think about the sacrifices that you're willing to make because it does cost money. It can be negatively geared. You can get hit with a burst hot water system and you need to replace it. Like these things are going to happen. So it's like you need to, I guess, forecast that before you make the decision. Rather than just jumping in straight away when you can't do it. So the strategy piece is a huge one. Another lesson for me though, which I feel as though is super important is like where you get your information from.
Yeah, of course.
So it's like I used to watch the news a lot and, that was my main source of information. Obviously, social media age has changed that massively and it's easy as to get good information these days from YouTube and Spotify and whatever it might be. But for me, I subscribe to a lot of resources that are talking about the things that I'm interested in, investing, and the economy. And it's like, it just helps because like what I've realized over the last 7 years is there's like a huge difference between the data and what's actually happening and the narrative and how that's been interpreted. So, for me, like I really love following Core Logic. I really love following SQM. Because both of these resources, they look at what's actually happening in the market in terms of property price growth in all the different capital cities and major regional markets around Australia. They look at asking prices, they look at rental vacancy rates, they look at rental yields and returns, they look at population growth, they look at, different projects coming to the market and like things that are adding value to a particular region. And all of those things help me build that belief system and learn a little bit more about what's going on. Because like if I was following the media, like there's no chance I'd be doing anything. I'd be burying my head in the sand and like becoming a doomsday prepper.
Get those cans of tuna and baked beans in the cupboard.
But it's the truth.
I know. And it is really scary. Like a lot of people are struggling right now. There's no doubt about that. Like, yes, the media narrative makes it 1,000 times worse than what it actually is. But cost of living has gone up. Interest rates have gone up. If you didn't have the right strategy or the right understanding of what's to come going into buying a property, then yes, you'd be shitting yourself right now because you possibly would have made the wrong decision, borrowed more than you probably could have forecast to afford. If you're following those fundamentals, putting a strategy in place and really bedding down to why you're doing what you're doing or where you want to be long term and then reverse engineering it to how you can get there, then these things don't scare you because you've put a plan in place. You've bought a property that you knew you could afford. You've bought a property that, regardless of a margin change in interest rates or a maintenance bill that might come to you, those short-term things don't seem as scary because if you can ride the wave through a scary period, long-term you're going to be so much better off. So like, yes, things are scary right now. They've been scary in the past and they're going to be scary again in the future. From a long-term approach, the reality is property prices have gone up and have continued to go up on average per annum for ever since the beginning of time, forever, for the last 50 years. Like it's always looked positive when you take a long-term approach, and when you have a plan in place that you can see, like I said, that forest through the trees of thing, like you can see where you want to be long-term and make sure that you're not putting yourself in a situation where you're going to struggle if times get tough.
Yeah, and like times will always feel tough as well. Like our Opa, you know, our grandparents on our mum's side, our Oma was Dutch, so she moved over sort of in like the 1950s or 60s.
Yeah, 50s,
I think it was the 50s.
Yeah.
From Holland, and you know, she lived in Rotterdam, which was like the most bombed city in Europe during World War II. She lost 2 siblings during the war. Crazy stories, but she moved out to Australia because our Opa convinced her to go Opa. And they bought their first house in DY on the northern beaches in Sydney, and it was like a 1,000 or 2,000 square meters.
2,000 square meters. It was huge.
2,000 square meter block directly opposite a beautiful, massive park, literally 2 kilometers from the water down at DY Beach. Amazing little like 3-bed, 1-bathroom house, cute as. And in my Opa's diary, and we only found this after he passed, he wrote like a journal entry when he bought that house, and it was like, this was back when houses were like the Australian dollar was pounds, like it was the UK pound or whatever, and he spent £2,000 for the house back in like the early 1960s or late 1950s.
Yeah.
And he wrote that like, this is the most expensive purchase that I've ever made in my life. It's going to take me 30 years of my working career to pay this property off. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm scared. But I need to buy a house for ourselves. And it's like hindsight and perspective with, you know, however many years have been removed since then, 60, 70 years. You know, that property got sold in 2016 for $2.4 million from my mum and her siblings. It's probably worth about $3 million today.
Yeah.
And like, it's just always been expensive, and you need to recognize that, and you need to realize that, you know, property and all economic gains in society are going to trickle through the economy and end up back in the land values. And land is really one of the true finite resources that we do have on this planet, and everybody wants a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
So whilst we operate under this, you know, democratic capitalist system, property prices are expected to continue increasing into the future. And that's where you need to have that longer term perspective. That's where you need to have that belief that this is going to work out in the longer term. It just sucks. Like, you know, imagine buying a house in DY for $2,000. Like, I would have loved that as well, but I can't. So I've got to spend $3 million on it today, and it's probably going to be worth $6 million in 20 years from now as well. So, you know, it's the time horizon and the perspective and just seeing the forest for the trees and just recognizing that, like, this is a big decision, and all of those challenging emotions are going to come up throughout this journey. But we've learned to love it. We've learned to overcome them, and we hope bringing videos like this to you will enable you to overcome some of those challenges that we all suffer from, so that you can step into action and step into creating the life that you were born to have. And, you know, that's what we're trying to get out from some of these videos. So please give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel or share this video with somebody that you think will get a little bit of value out of it. Hope you had a bit of a laugh at our expense as well. Thanks for sharing, Chris.
Awesome, guys.
Woo! That's a wrap. That's a wrap.
Getting cool, bro. Yeah.
Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. That's so nice, eh?